Yeah.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order. If you'd rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to our Truth and Taxation meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to Kelly, who's going to do the presentation.
Thanks, Terry.
Sure.
All right. So my name's Kelly Schroeder. I'm the County Auditor Treasurer. So the Truth and Taxation meeting, as you're at tonight, is really to learn about Pine County's property tax levy, our budget, because all of that, of course, runs into your actual individual property tax statements. If people have individual questions on their properties, we do have assessor's office staff here that can answer those individual questions. We're happy to chat after the meeting too on your individual situations. If there's specific questions on your property, it's easier to answer those kind of on a one-on-one basis. So I'm going to go through the presentation and go through kind of what our budget is, what our levy is, our different sources of revenue that we have, besides just property taxes. There'll be an option, a time for you all to comment on what you've heard tonight or what you came to tell us, and then we will wrap up. The assessor's office will be here till after the meeting, so if you wanted to go talk to them, you don't feel like you have to get up and leave. They'll stay till after the meeting. So just to kind of give you an overview of our budget process started way back in August. And on August 20th, we had an initial budget review, and then I presented budgets that I'm responsible for, and some of our outside organization partners also presented budgets, for example, like the Historical Society and the Ag Society and Soil and Water. August 27th, additional departments presented their proposed budgets with whatever requests they had for the 2025 budget year. And in September, we wrapped up those budget presentations. The county board had a special meeting on September 10th to discuss the budget further. And then on September 17th, they adopted the preliminary levy. I want to draw attention to that word budget versus levy. So the budget is how much money we're spending, where the levy is how much of it that we're getting from property taxes. So it's important to distinguish those two because the budget doesn't equal the levy. There's a lot of other funding sources besides property taxes, and we'll talk about some of those tonight. Since September, departments have been working diligently to try to make their budgets fit within the preliminary levy, because when we adopted that preliminary levy, we were still sitting at a deficit in the overall budget. And so since then, we have been working to fine tune those numbers. And so tonight we're here, December 5th at the Truth and Taxation meeting. And so we'll talk more about the actual numbers. And then on December 17th, the county board will be adopting the final budget and levy. And this is just a review of what the preliminary property tax levy was, so that they adopted back in September. And we budget in different funds and we levy taxes in different funds, and those funds have different purposes. So you can see kind of down the line, we've got the general fund. So that's really kind of your main offices: auditor, treasurer, assessor, recorder, county administrator, elections, and then all of those public safety pieces are in the general fund as well. So the sheriff's office, the jail, the probation, all of those things. Health and Human Services, I think that speaks for itself. So that's our human services part, and then our public health part. Road and Bridge as well speaks for itself. That's our county roads. The building fund is a fund that a number of years ago, the county board had established to hopefully be able to plan for projects in the future. So we levy a little bit of dollars in there each year so that as building projects come up, we don't have to go hopefully take out a loan for little things, or we can just be able to have the funds to be able to do them. The next three on the list are our bonds. So that is our debt. And so within our debt agreements and our debt, our bond documents, it tells us how much we have to levy based on when we took those funds out and how they have to be paid back. So those levies there, they are set by bond, by those documents, and we don't have lateral on how much those levies are going to be from year to year. The tech fund was established about that same time the building fund was. So we recognize that technology costs a lot of money. And it seems like every time you need to replace a piece of technology, it's $300,000 plus. And so rather than having to try to levy those large dollars just in one year, the plan was to do these small levies over a period of time to be able to pay for some of those projects. And then the elections fund is what we pay for with elections. So that's that first column. And you'll see our proposed levies. The change from 2024 is an important column, so that shows you how that changed from 2024. The Health and Human Services, I just want to note because you'll see that their levy is going down, just slightly, but it's going down. And that is because we're moving up part of a position from Health and Human Services into the general fund. And so that $36,925 just moved over to the general fund. And so they had a little reduction in expenses equaling that as well. I want to mention elections. So elections is something that we started doing different in 2019. So previously, as you know, election years are big in even years and not so big in odd years. And so previous to 2019, in even years like 2024, we would have this huge elections levy. And then in the odd year, so next year, we'd have a very small elections levy. And that really made budgeting very difficult. And so we found kind of an equilibrium now of how much we need to levy for elections to just keep it the same from year to year. So you don't have these big peaks and valleys. So you'll notice that far right column, I mean, overall, the levy was going up 3%, but you can see how that changed in the different areas of spending. So this also, so that previous slide just showed you the actual levy. This next slide shows you the expenditures and compares 2024 to 2025. I'm not going to talk through all those different line items. I want to note a couple of them though. The highway fund, you'll notice it's going down $4.5 million. And the highway fund's an interesting thing because it is all project based. And so this year we had a larger project list than we will next year. And so that's why you see that number dip down so significantly. It's just based on those project plans. Otherwise, really everything else kind of trucks along just as it was. Many of those changes in expenses, as we'll see in further slides, are due to salary, wage changes, and benefit changes. And so we'll see that here in a couple slides. I always like to break it down spending. So of these expenses, where are those dollars going? And so we break it down into general government. So that's kind of like the general fund. But it's not fully the general fund because the general fund also includes that public safety piece. So you'll notice the largest portion of our spending is in public safety. So that's your sheriff's office, your jail, probation departments. And then you'll see kind of around the wheel there, we've got Health and Human Services at 25% of the spending, highway at 22%, and then we've got a bunch of other little ones in there. Debt is the next biggest one at 5% of our total spending. And then the next question is, well, what are you spending those dollars on? So we're looking at all of those dollars and what makes up all of those dollars. So the majority of our spending does come on salaries. And then the next, salaries and benefits are well over half the pie that you see there. And then we've got services and charges, supplies, equipment, debt again, and then kind of the other expenses. You might say, well, what are those other expenses? So some of those are just fund transfers between departments. So for example, the land fund is giving the highway department $65,000 for a trail project. So that's included in that other expenses and like things like that. When we look at what our top expenses are, here is a list of 10 items, and this literally is 80% of what we spend our dollars on. So when you look at those total expenses, here's where 80% of them goes. So salaries and benefits, and you can see the change from 24 to 25. It's a pretty significant increase. And that is not due to an increase in staff FTE. That is an increase just based on where those union contract wages are and what the cost of the benefits are. Road and bridge construction, it still is at the top of the list for a large expenditure, even though it's much less than it was last year. It's still our second largest expenditure. And then debt, out of home placements. So that is your kiddos that unfortunately end up having to be placed either in foster care or some sort of other type of facility out of their home. And so that is unfortunately a taxpayer cost and a large one. Vehicle and equipment purchase, that's at $875,000. So that's in the highway department budget. And that we have a fleet manager who manages all of the vehicles. So he's buying road graders and dump trucks and our squad cars with those dollars. And he's been working really hard to have them on some sort of replacement plan. Medical services to prisoners ends up on the list of $471,000. So that is the medical cost to the folks in the jail. And that's unfortunately something that we have to provide them. And then the last thing on the list is the library appropriation. And then this just shows your revenues and your expenditures by fund. So you can kind of look through them, see where this is our total budget, where, how much is the revenue for each fund and how much is the expenditure for each fund. So you'll notice, for example, the general fund, there are $7,793 more in revenue than expenditure. So that is, we look at that as a contingency. Should there be slight overruns and things, you have a little bit of a cushion there just in case. The Health and Human Services Fund, you'll notice that their revenue is $250,000 less than their expenditures. And that is because they're using a planned spending of their reserve funds. And we've got a slide on reserve funds in a little bit. Highway Department nicely balances the opioid settlement. So those are, the county participated in a class action opioid lawsuit. And so these are just the spending of those lawsuit funds that we received. And we received those funds, they kind of trickle in over the next about 20 years. So we'll start to see different programs come up with those funds. The COVID-19 relief fund, so that's the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that we received back in 2021. We have through 2026 to spend them. And so these are the dollars that we just spend directly out of that fund. And there's a couple programs that supports. One of them is just our economic development coordinator. And then as we kind of work down the list, I don't know that there's really much else to kind of highlight there because there's a lot of just revenues equal expenditures. So overall, when you look at the total budget, you do see that the total budget is sitting at a deficit right now of $53,000. But we don't find that necessarily concerning because there is that planned use of reserves in Health and Human Services of $250,000. I guess I should mention about the jail bonds all the bonds, the three bonds, you'll notice that the revenues exceed the expenditures. And you might think why? And again, it goes back to those bond documents. We're required to levy, and we have a schedule we have to go by in those bond documents, but it's about 5% more than what our annual payments are. And they do that knowing that there's going to be people who don't pay their property taxes. And so it's to ensure that you have the dollars on hand to make that payment. When we look at the levy versus the budget, so again, I said levy is where the property taxes are coming from. So if you look at the general fund, for example, the proposed levy was $13.8 million. But within the general fund, there's $24 million of expenditures. So we kind of work our way down showing, of those expenses in the general fund, 57% of them are supported by the levy. And you can kind of work your way down and see, how that works out. You've got like road and bridge, for example, where only 18% of the expenditures are paid by the local property tax dollars. So when you get to the bottom line there, you can see the total proposed levy at almost $8 million. Our total budget's at $52.9 million. So of those total expenses, just 43.1% of them are being paid with the property tax levy. We use other revenues to pay for those expenses otherwise. And so I wanted to highlight some of those other revenues, at least in the general fund. So in the general fund, we receive county program aid, and so that is our largest revenue source besides property taxes in the general fund at about $2.5 million. So that's an appropriation we get from the state of Minnesota annually. Police aid again is another appropriation, but from the state of Minnesota that helps offset the cost of the sheriff's office. The PILT, the state PILT, so we receive federal PILT and state PILT. And so what that is it's payment in lieu of taxes. And those are dollars that the state pays us for our exempt lands that the state's responsible for. So that's like your state parks. Our tax forfeit land does land in that state PILT payment as well. Police contracts is another revenue that we get. So our sheriff's office contracts with the three big cities, so Pine City, Hinckley, and Sandstone. They literally purchase from our sheriff's office certain amount of hours each day in their jurisdictions because they don't have local police offices in their cities, and so they contract with our sheriff's office. Part of that as well is our school resource officers in that police contracts. And so that's where the schools, when they want to have a deputy that's within the school building, they have a contract where they pay for that deputy. Probation aid is just a state appropriation we receive for providing the probation services. Interest earnings are the dollars that we earn on the money that we have in the bank or in different investments. And in recent years, we've been able to capture quite a nice number in there just with taking in all the higher interest rates we were benefiting from. And so we're starting to see those interest rates trickle down. And so it's a little bit of a balancing act to make sure that we are locking in higher interest rates when we can, but yet we still have to have funds to be able to operate. The E911 grant is a grant that we get from the state of Minnesota to help pay for our E911, not necessarily our services, but like the system in the background of the 911 system. The solid waste assessment is if you have a property with a house or a building on it and it's taxable, you receive a $10 special assessment at the very bottom of that tax statement. And so that's what that $198,000 what it comes out to be when you add those all up. And that assessment helps pay for our household hazardous waste facilities. So we have one in Pine City and one in Willow River, where citizens who have paid that $10 can bring their household hazardous waste. So their paint stains, pesticides, all of that stuff at no charge. And then it also helps support our transfer stations. So we have one in Pine City, one in Willow River, and we have a recycling center in Sandstone. So it helps pay for all of that. Taxes, penalties, and interest. So that's literally when someone doesn't pay their property taxes on time, there's a statutory penalty or interest that we have to charge. And so that's what that revenue line item is. And then assessor contracts is our assessor's office. Townships and cities in Pine County can choose who they want to use for an assessor, and they pay for that. So the assessor contracts are the revenues that our assessor's office gets from those contracts of those jurisdictions that have chosen to contract with our assessor's office versus having a private person do it. When we dig a little bit more into those individual funds, so the general fund, again, when we talk about general fund, we are talking about, our public safety, but then we're also talking about we look at our row offices, these front row offices here, the auditor treasurer's office, recorder's office, planning and zoning, assessor's office, all of that's in the general fund. So we just want to show expenditures to 2024 to 2025. You can see an increase of $1.3 million or 5.7%. And then again, as you see the total revenue, we do have a slight contingency built within our budget right now, which we talked about earlier. Within our budget, we, in order to make this 3% proposed tax levy work, that's using $1 million of those ARPA, those COVID funds that we received in 2021 to kind of plug the gap. So those funds can be used for any governmental purpose. And so since 2021, the board has been working on finding, the best use of those funds. And now we're getting to the end of being able to spend them. And so we want to make sure they get spent here in Pine County. So we're using $1 million of that to help balance the 2025 budget. And then we already kind of talked about this, but the portion of those expenditures that are paid with the levy is 57% this year, which is down slightly from last year. So that tells us that there's more revenues that are not property taxes coming in to help pay for those expenses. General fund expenditures by major department. So I don't necessarily need to talk through these, but they go from largest to smallest. And so you can see kind of at the top there, you have all of your public safety services of where those general fund expenses are sheriff, jail, county attorney, probation. Those are all your public safety expenses at the top there. And then you can kind of work your way down of what each of those departments cost to run. And hopefully everyone has copies of this as well. And when we look at this, you can look at this kind of big picture, but then it's kind of nice to say, well, what do these dollars get us though? Like what are these people behind these departments doing? So we have a little bit of information for you on that. And so this first slide shows auditor, treasurer, and zoning. So in auditor, treasurer, obviously we're the finance end of the county, but we also are in charge of elections, and we're also in charge of processing deeds, making sure people's property taxes are paid so they can process their deed, and changing the name on the property. So you can kind of see over the history of time since 2018 of the number of those documents or number of things that we did in the auditor's office. We do a lot of other little things, but these are kind of the major functions that we do. And you'll notice that absentee mail ballots counted in the even years of 21 and 23, that was 0 because there were no state and federal elections during those years. And then that last bullet point under auditor treasurer, I always like to highlight. So those property tax statements that everyone sends their payments in to us, only a small portion of that actually is Pine County dollars. The rest of that is township, city, school district, state dollars. And so over total, we collected $43.5 million in taxes, which then we have to distribute back out to the 66 taxing jurisdictions. In zoning, again, we have other things that we do, but these are kind of just the numbers of what we do. So you can see complaints, septic permits, septic compliance inspections, shoreline permits, minor subdivisions, and then like variances and things. And I always find these numbers fascinating of like complaints and violations. In 2023, they were the smallest they'd ever been, which a majority of those complaints and violations in zoning is the point of sale septic inspections. So when someone actually sells their property and doesn't get their septic inspected, they land under that category. And so I can only think that people must be doing a better job at getting those done when they're transferring their properties. In the assessor and recorder office, so the assessor's office, their main things that they work on is obviously a lot of you have probably had an assessor knock on your door. So once every 5 years, they have to physically review properties. And so this shows you by year how many properties they reviewed. So there's about 32,000 properties in the county, and we're supposed to review 1/5 of those each year. But some years ends up to be more than others, just depending on staffing or the complexity of the properties. When we have a whole bunch of big farms, they can take you almost a whole day, where if you're in a city, you can do 20 in a day. So it kind of fluctuates on the year depending on where we're working. Sales reviewed, so all of the properties that sell or even have a deed transfer, our assessor's office has to review that to see impact on different programs, whether it's homesteads or veterans or those types of things. And then we note how many homestead applications they actually process. In 2023, previously those numbers all included relative homestead applications, and in 2023 that didn't, because those didn't end up going out during the 2023 calendar year. They ended up going out at the beginning of 24. Recorder's office, so a lot of you have probably visited the recorder's office for your birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses, which is actually a small fraction of what the recorder's office does. They also keep of record all of the real estate documents that get recorded on all the properties in the county and other types of documents too. So it's always, I'm fascinated by the numbers because you can definitely see the trends and that very top line of documents recorded of what's happening with property sales and what's happening, in 2021, mortgage rates were at crazy low time, crazy low. So everybody was refinancing. And there were a lot of sales that year too. So you see that huge number of documents recorded. In the sheriff's office, a statistic they were able to provide us is just their number of gun permits that they have issued, and you can see kind of some highs and some lows in those numbers. And so they have two different types of permits that they issue, one to permit to purchase and then permit to carry. The jail has a whole bunch of statistics here. And so you can you hopefully will have copies of those so you can look at this a little bit more. It's important to note that our jail has 131 beds. However, we can only operate at 85% of that capacity or 111 beds, because that's what the DOC allows us to be able to do. So Rod from the jail has provided just information on the number of people that have been in jail, number of juveniles, our average daily population, which since 2019, you can see have really been declining. Average stay in days listed, and then just some information on jail incidences that happened, and then the cost per day of inmate, which as you can see, when the average population goes down, the cost goes up because just because there's 20 less people doesn't mean that we get to do really any business differently in the jail, unfortunately. Those 2024 numbers are just as of November 25th, so that's not a full year comparison yet. Health and Human Services, so we just have a quick comparison here of expenditures 24 to 25. So you'll note that there's an increase of about $467,000 in expenditures in Health and Human Services, which is about 3%. We already talked about their proposed revenue for 2025 is less than those expenditures because they have that planned use of reserves. And then when we look at how much levy they get in comparison to their expenditures, about 30.7% of all of the Health and Human Services expenditures are paid by the property tax levy, which is down from 32% in 2024. Staying in the Health and Human Services realm, note of child protection reports, and you can kind of see how those numbers have changed throughout the years. And kind of smaller in the right there, it just notes all the total social services intake. So the number of clients that have had new clients that have come into Health and Human Services. Child welfare. And so this is just some more data on child welfare referrals and how those have changed through the years, mental health referrals, and then parent support outreach. And so a lot of those numbers, like in the outreach piece, have been pretty stable. And everything else is kind of changing somewhat throughout the years. So. And so that last slide was on children. This next slide is on adult protection and adult mental health. So you'll notice just how many mental health intakes and adult protective services pieces they've had, the last couple of years and then through November 15th. And then the other piece of Health and Human Services is the public health services. And these are their three main places that they work is in WIC, which is that Women, Infants, and Children program. So monthly, there's about 612 families involved with that. They have total home visiting services of 78 contacts they have, and then they do some car seat distribution and education to 110 people in 2024 so far. Highway Department, we, again, already talked about this a little bit, but the expenditures when you compare 24 to 25 are down significantly, 27%. But that is all project related. So you see those ebbs and flows through the years depending on what projects are happening. You'll note revenue equals expenditures, so there is no surplus or deficit in the highway department. The highway department does have a funding source of the local sales and use tax. And so those are dollars that come into the county from all, goods transactions throughout the county. And so within that budget, there's almost $8 million of that sales tax dollars. And that one, it's been a funding source that doesn't have to hit the property owners in Pine County. We need those dollars to be able to do the projects on those roads, but at least it's not necessarily on the property. It's not on the properties. It's on the people who are spending money here, which is actually a lot of people who don't live here. And then when you look at the levy portion of the highway department, about 18.7% of their expenditures are paid by the property tax levy in 2025. That's up significantly from 2024, but in 2024, we had some federally funded projects and things. So that's why you see that shift, because we don't always have federally funded projects. We've talked a little bit about the debt, and so you can see the years that our debt was last refinanced in 2015, 2017, and 2020. You can see where our beginning balances were, where we will be at the end of the year, and then kind of moving our way over how much our payments will be and what year those will be paid off. So we're really looking forward to 2031. It will make life a lot easier. But then, of course, the roof needs to be replaced and all sorts of things. So, but we'll focus on 2031. I've mentioned a little bit about fund balances, and so that you can kind of think about as a savings account. So in the general fund, we have a fund balance of about just over $8 million. In that $8 million, there are dollars that can only be used for certain things. For example, like the gun permits. We have revenue, we have a fund balance in gun permits, but it can only be used on things that support issuing the gun permits. And we have a lot of separate little kind of pots of money, which actually they add up to be about $2.5 million that we can only spend on certain services. So we focus a little bit on the unassigned balance, which is about $5.5 million of that total 8 million. Because those are the dollars that we can use in the general fund for whatever purpose we'd need in the general fund. And so that's sitting as of 12/31/23 at about 26% of the expenditures in the general fund. The state auditor always would like us somewhere in the 35 to 50% of expenditures. However, back in 2012, Pine County was sitting at about 6% of expenditures. And so at that point, the county board set a resolution and a policy that we would aim, that 35 to 50% the state auditor wants us at is just not attainable for us, or for our property for our property owners. We don't need to be a bank, but we need to be able to pay our bills and be ready for the rainy day. So the board set a policy at 20 to 35%. So we're currently sitting at 26%, and we've kind of been hovering around that same point about the last 5 years. If we were at the upper end of that policy, we'd be at about 7.3% at 30, but we're sitting in an okay spot. Health and Human Services has a fund balance of about $4.6 million. We do note that within that $4.6 million, they have a restricted fund, McV, which is a home visiting program of $168,000. So those funds can only be used on that home visiting program. But otherwise, you can see that $4.6 million. And within that budget, within the Health and Human Services, we did talk about how there's a deficit in that budget. And that's because there's that planned use of using some of this savings account. The Highway Department was sitting actually at a almost nearly $5 million deficit of the fund balance at the end of 2023. A lot of that is a function of just the timing of the state payments and the projects. And then the land management fund sitting at almost $2.2 million. So that is the fund that manages the tax forfeit land. And that the tax forfeit land program has changed significantly over the last couple years due to a Supreme Court ruling. So that land management fund will be, it won't be growing, it will be shrinking over the next many years. Because there's not, previously, we were able to, the statute allowed us to keep 40% of what tax forfeit property sold for. And now we only get to keep what was owed on the property taxes. Yeah,
That, not even related to the question. I'm
Sure.
looking at, but, going back to that tax forfeited land, it's pretty interesting when I open up the plat book now. Everything that used to be tax forfeited, it says Pine County Memorial Forest.
right.
And, you know, that's, have a rather large chunk of land, I benefit from that. Being a memorial forest versus tax forfeited land, but, tax forfeited land is supposed to be sold back to the public. And then I really don't want to have any neighbors there, so it's great, but it kind of sounds like a land grant.
Sure, and I guess, I don't know if the commissioners want to answer that. I mean, it's a policy question of, is there value in retaining that land and providing public use of that land and timber management of that land, or should it be sold back to the taxpayers?
You guys already made that decision, obviously, because when you changed the designation from tax forfeit to memorial forest. That still sounds like a land grab to me, and it's not gonna go back into public sale with that designation.
Right, and that was the intention of that designation. Sure.
Steve,
I'll
you wanna-
try to answer that. That, most of those big holdings that used to say tax forfeited were forfeited, I don't know, 70, 80 years ago. Is that, yeah, 40s and 50s. So that's a long time, 70 years ago. So anyway, instead of having the plat book say tax forfeited, we had much of that land wasn't saleable at the time. It didn't have roads to it, didn't have a lot of things that you need to sell land. So the county, the state came in years ago and captured a whole bunch of land and called it Nemadji State Forest and St. Croix State Forest. And Pine County said, we can manage this much. So we've used it for the land that has timber on it. We've used it for timber production and recreation. We have then subsequently in the last few years changed it to a memorial forest, and it'll be designated as a veterans memorial forest
In the spring, they hope.
in the spring.
Wasn't that done in 2012?
Right. Yeah,
The memorial forest
Yeah.
was,
But
but
I mean, it's kind of odd, it's just showing up in the plat book now, or did I miss a few?
you missed a few flat books.
So the 2017, yeah, the 2017 plat book was the first one where we had changed
Okay,
the verbiage and actually reflected that even though it was done in 2012.
yeah, those aren't my questions today, so I'll let you get me on.
Okay, no problem.
It's just a slight irritant.
Sounds good.
I'll be back. Well,
Oh, I'm fine. No, go ahead. Oh.
Last month, 565 acres that was donated to Pine County and Rock Creek. Up for sale.
I think you're probably talking about the stuff that Pheasants Forever, or not Pheasant, the land trust purchased. Right, Foreman X out there. So that was not Pine County. That is a private entity purchased that and is donating it to the DNR. So they come to the county to notify us of it, but we don't get to stop it happening or anything like that.
So the designation of the memorial, will that stay and always be for residents to use and to manage, or will it be sold again?
It, if I could, it would require a public hearing if it was part of it or all of it was gonna be sold, it would require a public hearing to take that designation off and then it could be sold.
I like the idea of keeping it.
Well, I do too, but I'm not gonna be here forever, but.
If I could just say add to that, the only reason I bring that question up is that over there in our township, we got plenty of state forest over there. And now we got this Memorial State Forest over there. And our taxes are so high over there, unfortunately, there's people that can't even afford to live in their homes anymore. I'm not one of them. I can pay my prop tax. Matter of fact, as of now, I'll make it clear, my property taxes aren't unpaid, let's just call them disputed, because that's what they're gonna be. But I still just, and I agree with you, sir, with the Memorial Forest thing. I think it's grand that it's for our veterans and everything. But how was our tax base ever gonna go down when you just took all the tax forfeited land that was left, and I'm just gonna use our township? You took that land and now we can't sell it, so the only way that our taxes go down in our township now is if Bernie subdivides his 160 acres and maybe sells off a few plots or something here, then our tax base goes up. But you guys just designated a tax forfeited land. If you look at the Constitution, the land, the minerals belong to the people. The land is supposed to be returned back to the people. I am passionate about state forest, memorial forest. I think they're great. But it's not anybody in this room to take that land out of the public and turn it into memorial forest. As grand as that sounds, it's great, but we got a lot of memorial forest too.
Yeah, and I think we could debate that we have been debating for years.
I mean, how do we
Yep.
get our taxes lower when we have no land to sell?
Well, there's a lot of land for sale every year. I think if you look at how many transactions took place, there's a lot of land that sold.
We sell it every year.
We've sold
Oh,
about,
I agree, but you're not gonna be selling any Pine County Memorial Forest
We've
going
sold-
forward, so let's just leave it at that. We'll just end that discussion. Thank you.
I do have something to add to the,
Do we want to, can we finish the presentation and then we're almost to questions?
Yeah.
So would that be okay? Are you okay with that?
back
Okay, we'll go back to it because I think there's going to be more than just you.
So we just wanted to note how the property taxes are actually calculated. And so as you look at your proposed statement, you'll notice a taxable market value, taxable property value listed on there. And the property tax calculation works in, we take that taxable market value and we take it times a class rate. And that class rate is determined by your classification. So whether you're agricultural or residential or commercial, so it's times your class rate, and that class rate is determined by the legislature, which gives us the tax capacity of your property. So how much capacity it has to pay taxes. So we have an example here, a $200,000 residential homestead. Their class rate is 1%. So that tells us they have a tax capacity of $2,000. So the $2,000 isn't the taxes they pay, but that's what the number we're going to use in the formula. So we take that number and then we take it times the tax rate. And we come up with that tax rate, and this is only the county, because of course on your tax statement, you've got the county and your township or city and your school district. But the counties works, and everybody's works this way, but our total tax capacity in the whole county is about $54.7 million. And our tax levy, our proposed tax levy anyways, was about $22.8 million. So you divide those two and you get a tax rate of 41.66 approximately. So to figure out how much your county taxes are going to be on a $200,000 home, you would take that 2,000 times the 41.66%, which would tell you that your county taxes on a $200,000 taxable market value are $833. But that's only the county portion. So we do that with each other individual entity of the school district. What's the tax capacity of all the properties in that school district and what is their tax levy? And come up with the rates, and those rates are all applied back to that same tax capacity. here is just a kind of a snippet of the main different types of classifications. So residential, seasonal, ag, rural vacant land. So that's just your vacant land that's not being farmed, commercial or industrial, and apartments. And so it's interesting because you can look at 2025 values and how much they changed from 2024 and kind of on a percentage basis. So residential property, the values increased from 2024 about 5%, seasonal about 2%, and kind of down the line. But then you get over to the next part of the chart where it starts to talk about tax capacity. And so again, remember, tax capacity is that taxable market value times whatever class rate the legislature decided you were going to be. So yes, residential works really nice because it's 1% typically. There's special situations of like disabled people that get a slightly less tax class rate. But residential is typically 1%. And so it translates very nicely into the tax capacity of, you know, your values changed about 5% and your tax capacity went up about 4%. Seasonal is kind of a 1-for-1 as well. But when you get down to, for example, commercial and industrial, you'll notice commercial and industrial values only changed 7%. But the legislature has made the decision that commercial and industrial property should pay more taxes. So their class rates, 1.5% if they're under 150,000 or 2% if they're over 150,000. So you'll notice their tax capacity, even though their values only went up 7%, their tax capacity went up 20%. So what that tells you is that now those commercial properties, they went up significantly more than the other ones. So those commercial properties are going to have a tax shift and they're going to be picking up more of the paying the tax levy than the other types. The other kind of one that illustrates this is apartments. So you'll notice apartment values went up 9%. But then you look at the tax capacity and it actually went down between 24 and 25. And you might say, how can that be? And that's because our friends at the legislature decided on low income apartments, the tax rate instead of in 2024, it was 0.75% of it, where in 2025, the legislature decided it should only be 0.25. So it's a third of what it used to be. And so that's why things like that happen of the value went up, but yet the tax capacity went down. And so again, these are averages throughout the entire county. So individual properties change at different rates depending on where they're located and what they're made of. Is it swamp? Is it high ground? Is it, what kind of house is it? All of those things. All right. We got to the questions, and then I just wanted to mention as well, the final budget and levy will be considered at that December 17th board meeting, about 10 days out. So I think,
Kelly, can I just point out a couple of things?
sure,
When you talk about the tax capacity, that's the multiplier that we use. And so when I first got on the board many years ago, it was about 67%. So if you had $1,000 tax, you're multiplying by 0.67. Now it's 41%. So that's a significant change. And it's nothing really we did. It's the fact that our homes, we've had a lot of new construction, but my home, I'm sure your home, the value has gone up a lot. So the budget hasn't followed that. It might seem like it when you get your taxes, but it hasn't.
Ma'am, did you want to go forward with your question?
I do.
Thank you. Do you want to come up to the mic, please?
I don't think I need to. Hang on to this. So you had mentioned the SCOTUS ruling about how Pine County was keeping 40% of the equitable value that should have went back to the homeowner after.
and that wasn't just Pine County, it was the whole state of Minnesota and 13 other states.
Right.
Right.
It was Tyler. Yep. versus
Yeah,
Hennepin
we don't get
County.
that.
Right.
We talked about that too, not tonight.
Right, so have you notified the people here in Pine County that they can do the claim for that?
Can I answer that, Madam Chair?
Please do.
Yes, so there was a action lawsuit actually filed, not against Pine County, but against like Hennepin County and St. Louis County.
And the whole state of Minnesota?
yes, but not Pine County specifically. And so,
Pine County's in there though.
It
right,
affects- it
so we,
affects Pine.
so we participated in that class action lawsuit. We participated in that. So there is a law firm that's representing that class action lawsuit.
Prolong.
So in September, early September, we had to give them access to all of our property records. And so they went through and sent letters to everybody that they could find that potentially had an interest and explained how they could claim their
And if they
proceeds.
didn't, then they lose the right to be able to make that claim as an individual.
Right, because they do need to take action. And I mean, we've got things on our website about it. You know, it's a lot of
Pine
places.
County itself doesn't know who those people are and they could have notified them individually.
Right, when we forfeited their properties, we notify them significantly too. And so like
Was
in,
notice given?
right, when we forfeited their properties, we have to serve, the sheriff serves them, they post the properties, we do certified mail. No, because there is the class action lawsuit and
Everybody's included only if they,
right, but we had to provide them we provided the company the data to provide the information to the people. And so when there's legal proceedings, there's the proper channels. And so we were not the people that were supposed to be notifying in that lawsuit.
the other question I had about that was, it only goes back to 2016. How long has Pine County been doing that?
Since the statute was put in at about 1930,
So we only get to go back to 2016.
that was part of the settlement, which, I mean, was done by
So
those.
should the individual be able to go back further?
I do not believe they can be, well, I don't know. I mean,
The question is, yeah, you can go back further.
According
Yeah,
to
right.
this, it says
You wanna
if you
spend
don't
money
make
on
a
a vote?
claim, then you don't have
Oh,
any.
you don't have to spend money on a lawyer.
You go back to 1930, land was worth next to nothing, you're gonna get a few dollars on that land forfeit.
Well, as it goes anyways, the lawyers will get most of this anyways.
Always.
Yeah, of course. According to what it looks like, that each property owner, which.
Madam
which
Chair,
should-
can I make,
It should actually be land.
go ahead.
Okay, Josh,
The problem is land.
okay,
And taxing personal property on the land is the problem.
Josh is gonna make a comment.
And I'd just like to make a comment on this specific thing. To be clear, most of the property that the county gets forfeited, if any one of you people never paid your taxes and it got forfeited, there's tremendous communication that goes on with at least nowadays. I don't know what happened in the thirties, I wasn't there, but there's a lot of communication. It isn't just, we're waiting for the day that you didn't pay your taxes so we can go steal your property. And to talk, you need to come up to the podium and talk. That's the proper way to do it. So I'm speaking right now. Let's be clear on this. Typically, do you forfeit a piece of property that you could potentially sell for and make some money on? No, it's some junk property that nobody cares about. That's in Shengwatana, that's in Nemadji, that's somewhere have you that isn't worth your time to pay the taxes. That's typically what happens. It comes to the county, we get it. A lot of times we've had it where there was 50,000 tires on a piece of property. There was all this stuff that we have to use or taxpayer money to clean this up, even to sell it. That's where that money was going to. It wasn't a land grab. It wasn't a money-making venture. It wasn't by all means. You maybe made a few bucks on one piece of property. You spent a ton of money on another piece of property. Now we can't do that. That is not what's gonna happen. So, we will have property that is gonna cost us a lot of money to fix. We just had some property in Sandstone that we essentially sold to City of Sandstone so they could rehab it, to put some housing stock back in there. We sold it for $1. Kelly's department, I'm guessing it didn't cost her $1 to do that. It was a lot of money went into making that happen, if it even has happened yet. We just took board action on it. So, with that, like I said, there's a substantial process to go through that legally we have to go through to forfeit a property. So,
I'm gonna add, Josh is right. You do need to come to the mic and we ask that you say your name and where you're from, please, so that we can do that. Can you come to the mic, please, sir? Yeah, it's online, so everybody needs to be able to hear you.
Sorry, I will do that next time.
Thank you.
It's kind of nerve wracking being up here.
Now you know.
Feel like I'm under the spotlight here. Yeah, I'd like to just say, you know,
Your name, sir, and where
oh,
you're
I'm
from.
sorry. Yeah, my name's Bernie Palmer. And I have a place out by in Arna Township, a little town called Marksville. Yeah. Very blessed to have that. And, you know, I'll give the glory to God on that one. Thank you very much, Lord. Yeah, okay, so we got through the Bernie Palmer stuff. Okay, if I'd just like to do this, if I could just, I've got like four questions I want to run by. And if I could do that, and then just, you guys can just, I'll sit down, keep my mouth shut, and you guys can just answer the questions. So I'll rattle them off first, and I'll do the best to try to explain this. And please understand, I'm not here, trying to be adversarial with anybody. I really don't. But, and I hope that you'll help me, and I like what I heard from you about this, when it comes to tax forfeiture and things like that. Because I'm gonna push the envelope a little bit on this tax forfeiture stuff, personally. So my first question is, how can we change the online status of my property from unpaid to at least disputed? How I got on that subject is that I shot a really nice 8-pointer here recently. I was pretty excited about it, but I was talking to a buddy and we were looking at this Pine County Memorial Forest land, as a matter of fact, which should be tax forfeited land. Anyways, I look and it says, Bernie Palmer says unpaid taxes. And that was kind of embarrassing. So I was wondering how, and I got to tell you this, it's not because I can't afford it. I got several properties up there. Matter of fact, all my properties in Pine County, I paid my first half taxes and I asked Kelly, we talked on the phone. I appreciate it too. She sent me the receipts. Most people don't ask for receipts. I got those receipts. And here's the thing, guys. When you go to a restaurant and you buy, you know, you got your wife with and stuff, and you order a filet mignon, baked potato, a salad, and a nice glass of wine, and the guy comes to you and he gives you a pizza and a glass of milk. What do you do? I mean, so that's where that receipt came in really good, because there's a lot of things on that receipt that you guys, not you guys do. I don't want to vilify you guys. There's all these things on this property tax statement that I didn't receive. And I'm wondering why I've been paying for it. I've been paying for it for a long time. So that was question one. How do we get that moved from unpaid to disputed, at least? Because that's what it is. Question number two is, and maybe anybody can answer the question in. Can someone please explain to me what the meaning of property tax statement is? Is it A? Is it a bill? B, is it an invoice? And what does the word statement mean? Question number three. What can a person do when he finds an error on his property tax statement? How do we correct
What type of error?
it? Just any type of error. That was gonna be my question. And you can answer that when I'm done. And I'm not trying to be rude to you, ma'am. Miss Lovegren?
Yes.
Thank you. My fourth question is, and two, if you guys can't answer them today, I'll gladly tell me who will give me the answer and when I can get the answer. So if you can't answer today, that's fine. So my question for is, please explain the process Pine County uses when they go after for someone when they have disputed property taxes, like Bernard Del Wallace Palmer too. And then I'll let you guys answer those questions. And if I could, after you answer them, I might have a follow-up of maybe one or two questions at best, just depends on how you answer them.
We do need to know what kind of errors you're talking about on your property tax statement, because that's gonna be your answer, is what kind of errors you're talking about.
Well, okay, maybe errors might be the wrong word for it. In some cases, there are errors. Like for instance, I get charged for garbage on, well, I have just two properties. I had three, but I was getting charged for garbage on every single one of them. And for 30 years, I've never had the garbage picked up at my place. That's just an example.
So
But I have many more too, and I can't, for the lack of time here, because
Yeah,
I'm gonna
and
follow
you're-
up with Kelly with my additional, because I have a lot more.
Madam Chair,
Yep, go ahead.
I think you must be on the tri-township.
He's in,
That's a
yeah,
township
yeah,
thing.
he's
That's not
got
a,
to try.
The
on the
garbage
garbage.
thing is,
Yeah, but
Yeah, you know what, guys, I'm just, you asked me an example.
I did, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
because that's why. So.
Do I gotta stand here all the time and waiting for the answers?
Yeah, you
Good.
do.
Oh, I
I'm just kidding.
All right, go ahead though.
I think most of these answers.
No,
Just a
so
second.
go ahead, let's start with number one.
Okay, but I want to go back to, the reason that it's important.
We're still on 4?
We're still on 3.
Oh.
So,
Thank you.
with the errors, you bet. So it is important because if you're going to go garbage, that is through the garbage. So that's through your township. It has assigned, they
Yeah.
send it everybody, and I think it's every parcel pays on that.
Steve, ma'am,
I
However,
got them to change it in 2021.
I was gonna say, however, you can get some of the money
You-
back for your other
you did.
townships, so you just pay it once.
since you asked me a question about some of the service we don't get, because I was trying to keep it short here, so I'll try to speed up the story. We get funds from you guys out there in Arden Township, but now we had a fire about, it's really interesting. It was before, I think it was that meeting in March or something. We have an election, we talk about the budget. Anyways, 4 days before it, we had a house burned to the ground. Our fire department, who we paid, never made it there. The DNR put it out. I went to our meeting and was talking just like you guys. And I gotta thank you guys for letting me have free speech, because you know what happens in Arden Township? Well, luckily for you guys, the sheriffs are right below us. So when they call the sheriffs out there, Arden Township, they gotta drive a long ways out there just to kick me out. And I haven't been kicked out of here yet today, so I appreciate it. Thank
Well, maybe
you.
we should let you sit down. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't like violence, you know, so, hey, I gotta tell you, the Pine County sheriffs are absolutely great. I love them. They're good guys.
I do think a lot of those questions would be answered better one-on-one.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm gonna do though? I'll make it easier. I'm gonna request, is there a clerk here? Oh, it's recorded. Better yet, so, they'll submit those questions under FOIA. And that way, I don't know what the, rules and regulations, you guys got somebody here at the courthouse that can tell you about FOIA regulations. If I could just have any answers that you can't answer today within 30 days, that'd be great.
Yeah, they're pretty.
Because I'm not paying my property taxes till I get them, is what I'm telling you.
What do you mean until you get them?
And plus some other ones, so go ahead. So, question number 1, does anybody want to take a shot at that?
So that's actually your forms. And your forms, we only have so much room. And I don't think that disputed is actually,
It's not a legal term
Yeah.
in the property tax world. I mean, you could,
Well, you're probably right about that, but I don't care about the property tax world. What I care about is my online reputation, and unpaid doesn't look real good. We can agree to that.
but.
And it's not that I can't
Yeah.
afford it,
But it is.
but it's disputed, so I want to find a way to change that. Ms. Lund,
I think that's going to be a state thing because we only have so.
Well,
many
you guys
rooms.
work for us here in Pine County. I'm not gonna go to the state. That's a long drive. Well, I agree.
Do an answer. Is there any better way to answer that one?
no, I mean, you could formally contest them as well by filing in tax court.
Well, let's just do this. We'll say that question number 1, you couldn't give me a real straight answer on it. So number 2 is?
I've already attempted to answer number 2, so.
No, you didn't.
Statement?
Oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yeah, Kelly, I'm sorry. Thank you.
The meaning of a.
I
property
stand
tax
corrected.
statement.
Yeah,
Is it a bill, an invoice, or what is a statement?
the statement's what I get from when a feed mill.
What?
Well, when I
Yeah.
get
Right,
it's stating what you owe,
right.
what you,
What you got, right?
yep,
Yeah. That's my point.
yeah.
I got this statement and there's a lot of stuff on there I didn't get. So you understand where I'm
Like
going?
what?
We're not here to discuss that part because that's a long discussion. Here's what we could do though. You can speed up my case into court. We can talk about it there because that's where it's gonna go. And you know what? And I'm not trying to create a problem with you guys.
Yeah.
Please understand this. I would rather have you guys working with me than against me. But I can tell you this. I can afford my property taxes out there, but there's so many other people that can't. I mean, they literally can't. I try to help people all the time. I always tell Lord, I go, no good deed goes unpunished. And it's just really sad because I see people being, you gotta understand, I was at a tax meeting and I'm being escorted out by the sheriff's office. They're good guys. They're just doing their job. I'd quit my job if I was doing that because constitutionally, I was right. You have the right of free speech. I get it. And I'm not gonna take up any more time. So let's just move on to the questions. Is it a bill or is it an invoice and what's the statement? You know, if you want to get up here and talk, you're more than welcome, sir.
Okay.
But not until I'm done. Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to talk to you, I think, too.
I will say that I look at my property tax statement as a bill. I know that I
I
have. to
hope
pay
it's
it.
on friendly terms too, sir, because you wouldn't do good if it was the other way.
Yeah. Uh-oh, is that a threat?
No,
Okay, boys, bring it down.
So did you hear the answer?
I said, I look at.
no,
my
I didn't. I'm
property
sorry you
tax-
interrupted me. Sorry.
But I look at my property tax statement as a bill. I know that I have to pay it. So it's called a statement. And I get statements from the doctor's office. I get statements from a lot of places, but to me, I know that I have to pay that bill. Does that
So is
answer?
that the clear, I mean, so a property tax statement is a bill
That's how I look at
and
it.
a bill you pay when you receive certain goods. But if you don't receive all those goods, you still pay the bill. That's why. So, and let's just leave it at that. It was just a question and you answered it.
So let's go to question number 4.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer this one really well because that was my job. I forfeited properties for like 20 years. I did that. And
I don't want to, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So our process is you get, when you're the first year that you're delinquent, you get a letter and it says, hey, you owe taxes. The second year that you're delinquent, you still get a letter that says, hey, you owe taxes. So every year that you don't pay your taxes, you get a letter from the treasurer's office. Have you gotten those letters?
No, I
They were mailed today.
Oh, you'll be getting it really soon.
haven't had time yet to
You'll be
get
getting
it.
Soon.
It's only I haven't just paid my half,
So you're
the
gonna-
second half.
You're gonna get that letter.
Okay.
And then before we forfeit your property, we send you letters again. You get registered mail. The sheriff comes out and they serve your property. It's in the newspaper, which is very expensive. for us to do.
Right.
We've tried to get to do it online because the paper costs so much.
It's not good to not pay your property taxes. I think we can agree, right?
It's not, and
Yeah.
it's very expensive for us if you don't pay your property taxes,
You-
just
you-
saying. So if you don't sign your registered mail, then I would have had sent you a regular mail because not everybody wants their certified letters.
So we can agree on one thing. It's not good to do that.
Right, and
Yeah.
we go over and above.
So then here's,
to
I'm
make sure
glad,
that
so
you-
now I've got my follow-up question to that. Can anybody here, define extortion? Anybody here?
Taxation without.
I know, I'd like these guys to explain it. Thank you though. I appreciate it though. You know, plenty.
Tip over the podium.
I'd like to talk to you, man.
Of someone to, forcibly, or deflect forcibly, some goods from them.
You know what, sir? You're pretty darn close. Let me read it to you. The practice of obtaining something, especially money, through force, threat, or forfeiture. Kind of sounds like our government. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of that going on.
Did anybody else have any questions for us tonight? Okay, you have to come up to the mic and tell us who you are and where you're from.
Well,
I'm sorry, there's people online and they need to hear you too.
Jimmy the hippie, nice meeting you. Peace, love, psychedelic.
You're going up?
Yep.
Okay, honey. Oh, I thought you wanted to read it. Fine.
Yeah, if you would.
Uh,
Craig, sorry, I'm a resident of Rock Creek. I've also been involved with some of these boards in the past and such. We've tried to dispute our taxes. We've tried to put a chain of title in,
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
recorded here at the Pine County Courthouse.
What do you mean a chain of title?
A chain of title is basically like an old abstract
Formulate.
where it goes back to the beginning of time. Ours happens to go back to a land grant from 1857. And we tried to record that along with our status as an American. The county has refused
To record
and-
your abstract.
any of it. If you would read that letter on the top there and try to decipher what that means for me, because I agree with this gentleman here. These taxes, you're extorting this money out of us. Taxes are voluntary. So to force this on us, could you read that out loud, Steve?
I can't see.
Okay. Josh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's why I'm not reading it too.
Got glaucoma.
Yep.
Do you want me to read it all? It just says, Dear to Mr. and Mrs. Sari, after consulting with the Pine County Attorney's Office with the review of the recording packet you provided to our office on Friday, March 29th, 2024, the packet will not be recorded at this time. The Recording Act, Minnesota Statute, Chapter 507 is designated or designed to protect persons dealing with land. The provided comments on their face do not convey or relate to any interest in the land. Any questions or concerns you have regarding this can be directed to our county attorney's office. And that just says Pine County
What does
Recorder.
that mean exactly?
Sounds like if you got any. Well, it sounds like you were denied whatever you were looking for.
Trying to.
And,
Put an abstract.
and if you have any other questions, talk to Reese's office. Yeah, yeah.
The statute 504.
So the statute tells us what is a
507, this
recordable
one's-
document.
It's
So the statute tells us what is a recordable document. So they took it up to Reese and Reese determined that what you were trying to record, according to statute, is not a recordable
so
document.
statute law,
Yes,
really?
done by the state.
If the
Yeah,
statute-
It's a
we have
statute.
to follow those statutes.
It,
It's not been passed by Congress yet, but it's still considered law, but it's not law.
it's made up law.
On face value unconstitutional. Check it out, separate versus United States.
Yep. So there's a lot of things that are brewing that I think you're gonna find that,
Debbie can,
you're gonna get these questions from a lot of other people, not just us.
I'm gonna send that to Debbie, then she distributes it all to us electronically.
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful.
It works a lot better.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
yield.
It's a difference between, I just have something I could say. I'm Craig's wife Kathy from Rock Creek. And I guess the problem here we have is we're considering everything property. Where property has a description, which was given out, not asked for, but given. And we just don't accept it. We can take our meets and bounds that we had for a land. And that we want that recorded back in our, as a people, as, name, not as a person. Which takes a little research, but you'll come to find out that when you're being called a person, that just means you're an entity. You're just something on a piece of paper. You're an artificial entity. When you're a people, then you're living flesh and blood. So the land belongs to the people, not a description to a person. I yield.
Thank you. Go ahead, Josh. Yep.
I'm not gonna comment on that because I have no idea exactly what you're going through or what you're doing. So
Probably shouldn't be up there.
I wouldn't know what they're doing.
Probably shouldn't be up there if you don't know that one, buddy.
Okay,
Including the Chevron decision.
all right, hey. Excuse me. So I just wanted to make a comment on the Memorial Forest. So the county has, I don't know exactly how many acres in Memorial Forest. I think Kelly does know that answer. The Memorial Forest was designated to not be sold. It was designated for everybody to use as public property. That doesn't mean that we do not sell tax forfeited land every single year. A lot of it. I think it was 1 million or a little over 1 million or a little under.
About 1,000 acres a year is what we've been doing.
Okay, and our tax forfeited pot or our public pot or county pot of land has been going down every year. If somebody, I own a business, if somebody doesn't pay me for said products they take out of my business, that happens a lot. I can't do anything about that. If I don't get paid for it, they just take it and whatever. And I fought this, I'm on the page of you guys. I've tens of thousands of dollars lost on stuff like that. The county, if they don't get the property taxes that is, I guess we can argue owed, not owed,
Levy.
however levied against the property, are we just supposed to just don't pay them, look the other way? I don't know. That probably isn't really good practice, I'm guessing. Just like me legally, I can't. I physically went and took a toolbox back from a guy that never paid me for it. He called the sheriff's department and I got threatened to get thrown in jail for taking my property back. Whatever. I wasn't impressed. Anyways, the county, they do by statute, by law, they can forfeit on properties. Not something we enjoy doing, just like our sheriff's department.
We have to.
Yeah. Yeah,
No.
just like the sheriff's department, you've seen the budget on the sheriff's department, the jail, the county attorney, the probation. There's nothing money making about that department. Nothing good about it. Sometimes you gotta arrest people, sometimes you gotta put them in jail. It's just, we're human, it's bad. And I would even argue, I think they put a dollar value of $200 and some per person that sits in that jail. Well, if you think about it all, that's just the jail stuff. Just like I argue a lot, we have contracts with our sheriff's department. Our sheriff's department's got contracts with cities and schools. And I wanna say, is it 70 some bucks an hour that they pay us to have that? Well, to provide that service in this county is what, 2/3 of our budget? That directly, that affects. So that 70 bucks an hour that they're paying, is not, it's a collaboration, I guess is what I'm saying, because it's costing us, it's costing everybody far more than that. It isn't a money-making adventure. So there isn't nothing in this county or in any county that is a money-making adventure. It wouldn't be good business, otherwise I'm guessing someone would buy a state and run it like a business. So them are just my comments. Appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Sir,
I just wanted to ask a question to you guys.
wait, you're only allowed 4. Okay, fine, 5.
No, thank you.
No.
That's it.
Are you guys a corporation?
No,
Are you incorporated?
no.
That's part of the issue, I believe. And we need a constitutional sheriff. Not LEO law enforcement officers. We need peace officers. The sheriff will get their notice.
So what state has peace officers?
Every sheriff has the ability to do his role as a peace officer compared to a law enforcement.
Okay,
And since the United States is bankrupt, there will be some of those changes happening. So that sheriffs can become peace officers and not law enforcement officers. And that's also part of the Chevron doctrine.
I bet they would like that,
I
to
hope.
be honest. I'm thinking they
And
would.
actually, it's all our civic duty to be peace officers.
Yeah.
Each one of us can be.
Since 70.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, so are there any other questions on the budget? Sir, did you have a question on the budget? Come on up. Hi.
Glenn Slottick. I live at, just moved in, 73261 Markville Road, which is in Arna Township. This was pretty grand here, this budget, and this is what we need.
You did a good job, didn't you?
Try to keep it kind of upfront and
Transparent.
transparent as possible.
Yes. Thank you.
Then we don't have a lot of people like Glenn Slottick coming up here, have to drive all the way over to Pine City just to ask why my Arna Township taxes went from $236 to my proposed 766 at 223% increase. Granted, I put a 50 by 40 by 52 shed up. My appraised value went up 79%, but Arna Township's taxes portion 223.43%. I'm here, what oversight do you guys got on these townships? And how can they get by with this? Do we have just a little fox watching the chicken house doing, what do we got going on here? And what avenues do I have? Like the other gentleman, I'll pay it, I guess, because I really don't know what else to do. But come on, you guys, these townships, what, you guys got any oversight on them or? None, none, it's free will.
Government.
Huh?
That's a local government you elected in your township.
Okay, So for the last 30 years, and I've had property, I shouldn't, I think it was 93, I've been paying taxes there, and I saw no sense whatsoever. Just let them have it, just pay it. I lived in Hutchinson, it was a vacation deal. Just pay, don't move up here and bam, I thought, you gotta be kidding me. I got, Pine counties go up 101%, the total is 121%, but 223. There's no oversight, none, they get a free willy, they can just kind of, now, that's fine, that's the way it is local, so your answer is, there's nothing you guys can do about something like this?
Run for the town board.
Okay, yep, absolutely. Anyway, I asked a question, what did you spend the money on? And this gal, she answered the phone, she tells me, she goes, oh, that's not public information. I said, well, try to get, what is public information? Is this not public information you're giving me? I thought it was.
Yeah,
Can't-
where did you call? Oh,
Bet it was Cheryl Wickham.
okay, because you didn't call me. I'm
No, no, no,
happy
no,
to
no,
send
no,
it
no,
to
no,
you.
no, this is townshipy stuff I'm talking here. Yeah. You guys, matter of fact, there's a Karen Stoomy somewhere along the line. What a grand lady. She's the one that comes out, looks at stuff and la-di-da and this woman, yeah, good stuff there. I mean, I got no problem with that. I'm just saying, what can I do here? Because I'm getting nothing. Simple answers like, where are you spending this money?
Do they have their annual meetings in March? Townships do?
I get it.
And did you go to that? Because
No, I
that's-
have not.
Okay,
Like I
So
said,
that's the one you're gonna want to go to because they're gonna tell you then what their budget is and what they're gonna be spending their money on. And
You get to help approve it.
yeah, the
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
it's not the town board that approves the budget. It's the people that attend that meeting.
okay, but now, let's just say I want to know what I've got written down is I want to know for my base point for this 2025, I want to know what was spent last, do they have to give that to me or I'm here to ask you what I can ask them.
Ask to see a copy of their check register. I mean,
What's that?
Ask to see a copy of their check register. I mean, that would be an easy.
Deny that.
Um,
They can make you pay for that.
they can make you pay for copies of it, but it has to be.
I'll pay through my nose for it because I think I'm paying for a lot of copies, a little bit more ain't gonna hurt.
They should.
What did you call that?
I mean, just because sometimes people,
Check register.
yeah, I mean, a check register would be the simplest thing that they should be able to provide you.
And is that gonna be itemized, so to speak, or all I want, this is that word
Ever
transparent,
use-
man,
Did
just,
you ever write checks?
I do.
I still do. And I still have a checkbook register, right? You write all your checks in your checkbook register.
Oh,
That's what you're gonna ask
talking
them
about.
for. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily gonna say what they bought with it, but you'll see the amount
I'm
and who they
fine-
paid.
I'm
And then
fine,
you
yeah.
can start to unravel.
So you'll know who does their roads. You'll see how much they pay to get their roads done. You'll know who does.
But they should provide that to me, correct?
Yep, and you should go to the
Could be
annual meeting
transparent.
in
with
March.
your money.
Go to the annual meeting.
Oh,
in
you can
March.
damn well,
Darn well bet.
darn well bet. I don't miss too many more town board meetings, much less the annual meeting.
Yeah, but
But
the
I just moved up here, man. It's
Annual
like,
meeting
come
is really
on.
important
You're
because that's where they do their budget and you are the one that approves the budget. It's not the town board
I
members.
get it. The township day, we called it McLeod County, go there and it's the only day in the year you can go do your
Yep.
vote and get counting. I get that.
Yep.
But when you ask the question now, it's like, come on, just give me the answer. And when we don't know, it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
That one's thinking, okay,
Yeah.
what don't we know? I think you
Can I
do.
Make a comment?
Does anybody,
Josh,
okay,
Josh's gonna-
I'd just like to make just a simple comment about townships, and cities and local municipalities.
Mhm.
That is the best way to get involved, because it is so one-on-one personal. But a lot of stuff happens there. And us as a county, we have went to local townships and municipalities, and tried to provide some help, like with this assessing properties, with zoning, with other stuff like that. And you get the metal cross in your face, like anytime the county wants to try to, I say help. They think we're just trying to be overreaching government and trying to force them into stuff. Craig was part of a local city, you still are or still or not. Okay, but anyways, and They're pretty good. They're pretty organized, that city. I mean, but a lot of these townships are very small.
Is
They
Arnett
don't-
doing something different than any other township in Pine County?
I don't think so.
It's all the same.
Well, I mean, the request for information, for example, different townships would be answering that differently.
Right. So we have some townships that and anything that they're gonna give to you, they're gonna charge you. And we have some townships that will have you sit down and they'll just walk you right through it, so it depends on who
The
you're
elected
working with.
officials.
I'm fine. If I am asking for it,
Yeah.
I'm fine to pay for it.
Yeah.
What I'd like to say is we just provided a overview of a $52 million budget. And obviously it's way more detailed than what you got, but Kelly does an awesome job at making it,
I didn't.
so you don't fall asleep to
Wow.
read it and.
I
and
didn't
still
just
hits the
fall
high
off the
points.
beat truck there, but when I see something like this, when it goes from an actual last year, 236 to 766, this is a township. Come on, there's gotta be some logical reason there to not have me ask this stupid
I'm
question.
sorry, and we can't answer it for you because
As long as
Yeah.
I got an answer from you, they must provide it to me.
I would think.
That's what I'm hearing,
Right, I
right?
mean, it's a Freedom of Information Act.
Say, Kelly,
request.
who appraises the value there?
That's Karen.
That's
Stumley.
Karen. She's a great,
Oh,
zero. I'd say give her more money. She worked through it pretty darn
It's very
good.
good.
She answered questions for me. They answered the phone, A, that's pretty good. And then answered the question B, that's pretty good too. So, yeah. Which one's my commissioner out there actually? Or you got knocked out?
I
of it
am
now
for two
the other
weeks and
guy.
then he is. Yeah.
What's that?
Roger.
Yeah.
Well,
Roger's gonna be doing it.
You're the Barn Springs Road guy. Yeah, okay. So anyway, yeah,
So excited, Roger.
well, but. Well, I don't know, I just, yeah, whatever, no.
I think he owns land in Arna too, so you should get along well.
What's with Arnold, you know?
Let's move on.
Me.
Are there any other questions? Because we really can't help you with Arna.
Yeah, it's just like,
Does anybody else have any other questions on our budget? Thank you. Good luck. We can't help you with Arna.
I know that, but you can, here, one more thing now, there's somebody, maybe you helped me, it was said that if you get over a 13%, then you can
That
try
was
to.
probably Karen.
I think it was Karen actually, leverage some of that money back or whatever. Well, I'm one of these guys that, I don't want them to steal it so I can try to get it back.
Which
So,
you're talking
so
to
there,
property tax-
so what does happen?
Property tax refund.
No, there's
That's
some.
what
Special
that's what she
property
would have been
There's,
talking
yeah,
about.
there's another thing after, a
Special.
13% jack, so I think I felt well within that turf. But I don't want to give it and then try to fight to get it back. That's what you people, the counties do to the state, and that's retarded. I mean, well, it is. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So if I'd be just like this gentleman, forget it. In that case, put me under that, what's that word you were gonna dispute it? Or how many years can I dispute
show
this
us
before you?
unpaid.
How many years? 4 years? How much is that gonna cost me to dispute it?
Well, you're gonna have, there's a lot of penalties and interest that get accrued.
Oh, but I mean, is there a percentage like that? Is it worth cause I could be a thorn in somebody's saddle and call it entertainment.
Well, so depending on your classification, there's different rates. It's somewhere between 8 and 12% each year.
Okay, so you auger it pretty hard there, 8 and 12%. You don't wanna deal with
It's
it.
done by statute.
That's not by
So-
statute. I didn't choose
Yeah,
that.
which ain't a law, and that, whoever said, statute is a statute, not a law, but I ain't got the money to
But we-
fight
and
that
we
one.
have come.
But yeah.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Are there any other questions? One more time, are there any other questions for this budget? You have to go to the mic, sir, and tell us who you are, especially since you came late and you didn't get to sign in.
Yeah, I'm Philip Lloyd and I live in Pine County, Partridge Township, and I just wondered, who's the commissioner for that? Because
Which
there's-
township?
Partridge.
Me.
Oh.
That's mine.
Yeah, there's nothing there and you know, a $200 tax increase is, when I first moved there, it was $668. Now it's 2,000.
Oh,
Now I did do some upgrades like concrete woodshed, which I'm sorry I did, but that still seems like a lot.
yeah, mine did that too. I don't, the market is strange. And what I can't explain it probably perfectly, but if you go back to like the 2020, 2021, and this is what happened to me. You know, when all the stuff was blowing up in Minneapolis, people were moving out, and then a house went up for sale by my house where
Mhm.
I had just moved to, and people were bidding on it because they sold down in the metro area and they had funds, you know, so they bid a local house up. And so when the sale went probably $100,000 more than it was worth, maybe more. So, but that made my value just go poof the next time they come and assess. That's just part of it, and that's the market working.
Yeah.
And then like when our assessors go out, they have to assess based on market and sales. So then, and then the state says to our assessors, they have to be between 90 and 105% of the value, you know, according to the market, when you assess a house with the like houses. That's where it has to fall. So if the market's sitting high, then they have to assess up. But I'll tell you, when we have our meetings, we always say, can we try to? And so we're running like 93%, somewhere like that. That's where we sit. We sit at 93% of the market value based on that, when they do their assessing, instead of the 100 and 105. But that doesn't help much, but
No.
it's part of the problem.
You might want to talk to the assessors after the meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Walk down the
will.
hall and talk to them.
The goofy part is, it seems like we get taxed on our personal property.
That's the value of the land. That's
Right, it's our home that we live in. That's our personal property that's being taxed. Nothing's private anymore. They think the state or the county owns it. They don't.
Mm.
It's our personal property being taxed on. So that's why you get taxed out of that. And they won't let us record our personal land, our land. They want to keep it as property.
Yeah.
But with a chain of title and an abstract to go back to the grant and the patent, that can never be taken away from you, ever.
Well, you know,
For
and
life.
when they did your abstract, they got,
Let's adjourn.
okay, when they did your abstract, they got all that information from the recorder's office. That's already there. Just for the record, you can go back and you can go through your property and you can find it back to the beginning of time. They've got everything recorded.
I-
Yeah. So, and that's
I
what you're gonna
published
put in your
it. I
abstract.
published it And recorded it.
Okay, all right. So do we have any, just one more time, any other public comments? Jimmy, you're fired. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming.